Call of Duty finally gave us the full patch notes for the Season 3 update for multiplayer and Warzone, which is of course the return of Verdansk. And I'm not gonna lie to you guys, there's plenty to go through. First of all, we have the console crossplay. With the launch of Season 3, there's gonna be 3 new options for multiplayer and Warzone. First of all, we have crossplay on, which basically means you can play with anybody, PC, PlayStation and Xbox. Then we have crossplay on but consoles only, which means you only play PlayStation and Xbox, no PC. And then we have crossplay off, which is going to be absolutely everything off, no crossplay between PlayStation, Xbox or PC. It's only going to be PlayStation with PlayStation, PC with PC and Xbox with Xbox. And to be honest with you guys, this is absolutely amazing. It was long overdue. It is finally here because let's be honest here, when crossplay is on, you're going to face so many cheaters, and that's been plaguing Call of Duty Warzone and multiplayer for the past couple of months. So yeah, definitely awesome feature. I recommend you guys to turn it off or on console only. It will be the best options. Then we move on to the UI or the user interface. Improved menu frame rate stability while compiling shaders, that's good. Then they go on to talk about the customizations, the challenges, events and all that, which I've already talked about in the previous video where we detailed all the content that'll be coming in Warzone and multiplayer. So if you want more in-depth detail of what's coming in terms of content to multiplayer and Warzone, make sure to check out those videos. I'm not going to go through them here because like I said, I've already done that. Now let's move on to the general features / tweaks in gameplay that they've done in the returning Warzone. First of all, we have the free fall shooting, which of course is returning. Now once you are free falling from the sky or from the plane, you can actually shoot just like I was in the OG Verdansk. You of course will be using your secondary weapon to do so. Then you have a new feature which is called the 360-degree revive rotation. Players can now rotate their view 360 degrees while reviving a squad mate. So instead of just being fixed on looking in front of you, now while you're reviving your teammate, you can actually look around you for incoming enemies. That will definitely come in handy and it will stop you being compromised in a lot of situations, so that's awesome. Then they've also changed some in-game circle pacing. The gas circle pacing is faithful to the original timings of the gas closing as well as the circle size and movement. Here on this small chart you can see the circle pacing in each circle and when it closes and what the delay is. That's going to be very important to memorize and know, so you know when to move and when not to move, so you do not get caught in the gas. They've also adjusted the Gulag loadouts. Loadouts within the Gulag has been reworked to improve variety and balancing. For example, in Circle 1 you'll have 3 different loadouts. The first one is the Strider 22 pistol, then the 9mm and then the GS45. For Circle 2 you'll be given the C9 or the AS-Val or the PP919. In Circle 3 you will be given the C9 with some attachments or the AS-Val with some attachments or the PP919 with some attachments. Then we have Circle 4 and onwards until the Gulag closes. For Loadout 1 you'll be given the C9 with more attachments, then Loadout 2 you'll be given the AS-Val with even more attachments, or finally the PP19 with even more attachments. Moving on from that, we have the infill and backup pistol. Players will now infill and spawn with the 9mm replacing the GS45. For late game redeployments will now spawn players closer to the ground, reducing the need to hover while positioning during final circles. Then we have a quality of life improvement, players respawn angles. Players will now respawn looking approximately 30 degrees downwards instead of directly at the horizon, providing a clearer view of potential landing areas. And finally we have the unsuppressed red dot distance. The distance at which unsuppressed weapons display a red dot has been reduced in Resurgence to better align to the map size. It's been reduced to 112.5 meters on Rebirth Island, down from 250 meters. Moving on from that, we have the removal of the double bags, the medical cabinets and the weapon locker to better service the classic feeling of Verdansk. That's definitely good. Another good change that a lot of players have been asking for is the second chance mechanics. The following items have been removed from the lot: Gulag tokens, reinforcement flares, and redeploy tokens are no longer a thing. The only available methods to return after death in Battle Royale are the Gulag victories, just like all times, buy station buybacks again like all times, and the jailbreak public events. These are the only 3 ways you have a second chance to return after you get eliminated in a Warzone match. Again, these are definitely a massive W changes. When it comes to the self-revive kit, they can only be acquired via the following sources. We have the legendary supply box, which is a random drop. We have the scavenger contract, which is another random drop. We have the buy station for $4,000 or the fire sale for free. Moving on from that, we have the death tax. They have reduced the cash dropped upon death to assist players returning from the Gulag, providing them with a larger portion of their previous cash balance for mid to late game recovery. 50% of the cash balance will drop on the ground, 50% will remain with the eliminated player, up from 20%. We have another quality of life update, and that is the loot angle. Interactions now require more precise aiming to reduce accidental item pickups. Okay, that is definitely good. Following that, we have the return of the classic buy stations. We of course have the vertical design, which we all know and love from the original Verdansk. That is absolutely amazing. Alongside all of that, we also have the new redeploy button, which is another quality of life update. And instead of hovering over each eliminated player and buying him back now, if you have enough cash, you can redeploy all your squad mates with one single button press, and that is a massive W. We have item icons. Each entry in the vertical buy stations now shows the icon of its respective item. We also have the item count. Players can easily see how many of an item they already own while in the buy station. And finally, they've also added subheaders for each category that are available in the buy station. When it comes to the spawn locations, buy stations will spawn in the same exact 30 static locations across every match. And if you guys played the OG Verdansk, these 30 locations will be the original locations that you could find buy stations in the original Verdansk. Moving on from that, we also have the inventory pricing. They have updated the pricing of various items in the buy station as follows. And as a matter of fact, they reverted all the prices to the original buy station prices from the OG Verdansk. When it comes to the armor plate, it's going to be 300. When it comes to the cluster strike, it's going to be 3000. When it comes to the precision airstrike, it's going to be 5000. For the UAV, 6000. For gas mask, 3000. For self revive, 4000 like we already mentioned. For the munition box, 2500. For the armor box, it's going to be 4000. And for the loadout marker for solos, it's going to be 6000. And for duos, trios and quads, it's going to be 10,000. And finally, for squad mate redeploy, it's going to be 4000. If you're playing trios, it's going to be 8000. And if you're playing on quads, that's going to be 12,000. And finally, for the buy stations, they have improved the interact angle. The buy station can now be accessed from any angle, including behind it, providing increased flexibility during tense engagements. Next up, we have the movement, and here's where all the controversy is, because of course the Omni movement feature from Black Ops 6 will be moving over to Warzone, but it's not going to be the same as multiplayer. They specifically said this is going to be a unique version of Omni movement, specifically only for Warzone, and all they've done is basically they've nerfed the Omni movement feature, okay? They have reduced the crouch movement speed by 10%. They have increased the crouch to stand speed by 15%. They have increased the crouch to stand speed while aiming down sights by 39%. They have reduced prone movement speed by 5%. They have reduced the sprint movement speed by 4.9%, almost 5%. And finally, they have increased the directional sprint animation blend speeds for improved fluidity. They've also reduced the jump cooldown by 40% for improved responsiveness during repeated jumps. They've reduced the Omni sprint side and back speed scaling by 8.5% to better balance strafe movement. And finally, they've also increased the slide friction by 4% to reduce overly slippery engagements. Okay, so while there are some good changes, but unfortunately most of them is just to reduce and basically nerf the Omni movement feature. To be honest with you guys, I've seen some people in favor of this change, and I've also seen some people that are against this change and feel that Raven Software has absolutely butchered the Omni movement feature. But to be honest with you guys, reading the patch notes, yes, it seems like a massive L, but unless we try it out for ourselves in real gameplay, then and only then we can decide if this is a good change or they've absolutely cooked the Omni movement feature. Alongside all of that, they've also made some adjustments to the armor. First of all, we have the maximum armor plates. Default maximum capacity reduced from 6 to 5 to match the classic experience. For the armor satchel capacity, now increases plate capacity by an additional 3 plates, totaling 8 armor plates when equipped, down from the previous 6 to also match the classic experience. For armor drops, eliminated players will consistently drop at least 1 armor plate in Battle Royale and Resurgence matches. And they've also removed gulag armor in unranked, which means now gulags are just simply health combat with no armor. Moving on from that, they have increased the heartbeat sensor battery life from 60 seconds to 120 seconds. So that's a full minute increase from 1 minute to 2 minutes of battery life for the heartbeat sensor. Now yes, of course it's not gonna have unlimited health like it was in the original Verdansk, but still from 1 minute to 2 minutes of life for the heartbeat sensor, that will definitely come in handy. Moving on from that, we have the precision airstrike indicator, which of course was added last year with Modern Warfare 3. To return to the classic feeling of Verdansk, the precision airstrike minimap notification that was added last year has been completely removed. Moving on from that, next up we have the perks, and the major change is that the removal of the lootable perks. As you guys remember, now on the ground loot you can actually find perk loadouts and you can use them. Well, that will be no longer the case. All lootable perks have been removed from Battle Royale as we return to the classic feeling of Verdansk. However, keep in mind that these may return in a future update depending on feedback. And then of course we move on to the weapons. As you guys know, 4 classic original Verdansk weapons will be returning: the Kilo 141, the CR56 AMAX, the HDR sniper, and also the Kali sticks, with the Grow also returned but as a conversion kit for the SWAT 556 battle rifle. Alongside all of that, they've also made some weapon adjustments, aka they've nerfed and buffed some weapons. First of all, we have the AK-74. They have increased the headshot multiplier, they have increased the lower torso multiplier, they have increased the leg multipliers, and also they have increased the bullet velocity. For the AMS-85, they have increased the headshot multiplier. They've also increased the leg multipliers, and finally they've decreased the bullet velocity. For the AS valve, they have increased the headshot multiplier, they have decreased the lower torso multiplier, they have also decreased the leg multipliers, they've increased bullet velocity, they've increased the aiming down sight movement speed, and finally they have increased the movement speed. For the Cypher 091, they have decreased the lower torso multiplier, and finally they have also decreased the leg multipliers. For the GPR 91, they've increased the headshot multiplier, they've decreased the lower torso multiplier, and finally they have reduced visual recoil. For the Greek C, they have increased the headshot multiplier, they've also increased the upper torso and arm multipliers, and finally they've also increased the bullet velocity. For Model L, they've increased the headshot multiplier, they've decreased lower torso multiplier, and finally they've also decreased the leg multipliers. So pretty much they all have the same nerfs and buffs. For the XM4, we have increased headshot multiplier, decreased lower torso multiplier, and also decreased bullet velocity. And finally for the Goblin MK2, the worst weapon in Black Ops 6, they have improved the aiming down sight speed. Next up we have the SMGs. First of all we have the C9, they have increased the headshot multiplier, they have decreased the lower torso and leg multipliers. For the Jackal PDW, they've increased headshot multiplier, they've also decreased the lower torso and leg multipliers while also increasing recoil strength and deviation. For the Compact 92, they have decreased the upper torso multiplier and also decreased the lower torso and leg multipliers. For the PP919, they have increased headshot multiplier, they have decreased lower torso multiplier, and they've also increased the leg multipliers. For the SOG, they have increased the headshot multiplier, and finally they have decreased the leg multipliers. And to finish off with the SMGs, we have the Tanto 22. They have increased headshot multiplier, increased lower torso multiplier, and finally decreased arm multipliers. For the shotguns, we have the ASG89, they have reduced view kick strength, and finally for the Maelstrom, they've also reduced the view kick strength. For the LMGs, we have the Feng 82, they have increased the headshot multiplier, they've also increased the leg multiplier, and finally they've increased the bullet velocity. For the GPMG, they have increased headshot multiplier, they have decreased lower torso and leg multipliers, and finally they have increased bullet velocity. For the PU21, they have decreased the headshot multiplier, they have increased upper torso multiplier, they have increased lower torso and leg multipliers, and finally they have increased bullet velocity. And finally to finish off with the LMGs, we have the XMG. They have increased headshot multiplier, increased lower torso and leg multipliers, and finally increased bullet velocity. For the marksman rifles, we have the AEK 973. They have increased the headshot multiplier. We move on to the DM10. They have increased the arm multipliers, increased leg multipliers, and also reduced flinch by 20%. For the SWAT 556, they have increased headshot multiplier, and they've also increased lower torso multiplier. For the TR2, it will now use AR and LMG ammo instead of DMR/sniper ammo. They've increased the headshot multiplier, increased upper torso and arms multipliers, and finally reduced flinch by 40%. And finally for the Sarkov, they have decreased lower torso multiplier and increased leg multipliers. For the pistols, we have the 9mm, they have increased headshot multiplier, they have increased upper torso and arm multipliers, and finally they have also increased lower torso and leg multipliers. For the GS45, they have increased the headshot multiplier, and finally they've also increased the upper torso, arm, lower torso, and leg multipliers. And to finish off, we have the Strider 22, they have increased headshot multiplier, and finally also increased upper torso and arm multipliers. And to finish off with the weapon adjustments, we have the Special Sarin 9mm, they have decreased lower torso and leg multipliers. Moving on from the weapons, next up we have the vehicles, specifically the vehicle vulnerability. For example, the ATV is going to be one hit from the launchers, grenades, traps, C4s, and Joker, but when it comes to thermite, it's going to require 10 ticks. The heli, when it comes to launchers, is going to be 1 to 2 hits, grenades is going to be 2 hits, traps, C4s, and the Joker is all going to be 1 hit, and the thermite is going to be 13 ticks. For the Polaris, it's going to take 1 to 2 hits from the launchers, 2 hits from the grenades, 1 hit from the trap, C4s, and the Joker, but will also take 13 ticks from the thermite. For the LTV, is going to be 1 to 2 hits for the launchers, 2 to 3 hits for the grenades, 1 hit for the trap, C4s, and the Joker, but it will take 17 ticks for the thermite. And finally for the cargo truck, is going to be between 1 to 3 hits for the launchers, 3 to 5 hits from the grenades, 1 to 2 hits for the traps, 2 hits for the C4, 1 hit for the Joker, and 17 ticks from the thermite. Moving on from that, we have the UI or the user interface. Pretty much everything will be reverted to the classic look. For example, the victory screen, as you guys are seeing, it's from the original Warzone. Also the tac map and compass icons, the ping visuals, and the scope fit colors are all returned from the classic original Verdansk. Next up we have the audio, and pretty much everything will be reverted to the original Verdansk. The cinematics, the music, the announcer, the hit markers, the death's door, the footstep recording, loot chests, buy stations, contracts and UI sounds, everything will be returned from the original Verdansk sounds. And to finish off with the Warzone Season 3 patch notes, we have the bug fixes. Now I'm not gonna go through all of them because there's way too many. If you guys want to read them for yourselves, make sure to check out the COD blog. But yeah, these were everything that was included in these patch notes. I'm not gonna lie to you guys, Season 3 is shaping up to be a massive season with plenty of bug fixes and all that good stuff with the return of Verdansk. It's shaping up to be an amazing season like I said. But with all that being said, make sure to click the video on the screen right now to know everything that will be coming in Season 3 of Black Ops 6 and Warzone. Thank you guys for watching this video.